He only meant to grab a coffee before his next shift, but when he opened the garage bay and saw a woman curled up in the back seat of a rusted car, mud on her jeans, eyes swollen from crying, engine hissing behind her, he didn't slam the door or call the cops. He just took a deep breath, walked toward her and said, "Ma'am, you okay? You don't gotta sleep here alone." What he didn't know, that woman would change everything, his past, his future, even the way he saw himself. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days, not a steady downpour, but the kind of cold, slanted drizzle that seeped into your bones and made every breath feel heavier than it should. Mason Burke's shop was the last open bay for 3 miles. It was the kind of place people only found when they were desperate: dusty sign, flickering lights, and a battered vending machine that hadn't worked since Thanksgiving. He didn't do smiles or chatter, just fixed what was broken and kept to himself. It was 6:12 a.m. when Mason rolled, opened the garage door, coffee in one hand, keys jangling in the other. That's when he saw it. A beat-up Chrysler LeBaron, hood half-popped, parked crooked across the edge of the lot, like someone had crashed it there and ran. Except someone hadn't run. He stepped forward, frowning. The driver's seat was empty, but in the back, barely visible through fogged-up windows, was a woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s, wrapped in a denim jacket, fast asleep, hair tangled like she hadn't brushed it in days, and her knees drawn up to her chest like the world was trying to eat her alive. Mason tapped the window gently. Nothing. Then again, this time, she flinched awake, wide-eyed, startled, and terrified. I didn't mean to park here," she stammered, struggling to sit up. "I was just gonna close my eyes for a second." "You're not in trouble," Mason said, hands raised. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't dead or something." She blinked at him. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. "Car died," she whispered. "Phone too, and I didn't have anywhere else." Mason stared at her a beat longer than he should have, then turned toward the shop. "Come inside," he muttered. "You look like you're freezing." She didn't move. "I got a heater and a pot of coffee. No strings. Door's open if you want it." He left the garage door cracked as he walked in, the rain tapping lightly against the pavement behind him. 2 minutes later, she stepped in, shivering, shoes soaked, arms crossed like she was still, ready to run. "I'm Mason," he said, pouring her a cup. She hesitated, then said, "I'm Brooke. Brooke Landry." "Brooke Landry?" He nodded once, like the name meant something, but it didn't, not yet. The sky was a dull bruise over the horizon, clouds stitched together like old scars. It wasn't quite dawn, but the light bleeding through was just enough to outline the skeletons of old junkers in Mason Burke's lot. He took a long sip from his steaming coffee and unlocked the side door of Burke's Auto and Salvage. The buzz of a flickering fluorescent light humming into life overhead. Another morning, another day, fixing someone else's mistakes. He hadn't expected to find a car there. Not in that spot. Not at that angle. Not with condensation clouding the windows from the inside. He frowned. There hadn't been a car there last night when he locked up. He'd done the rounds, checked the gates. This one hadn't just rolled in. It had been placed awkwardly, like someone had aimed and missed. The closer he got, the more wrong it felt. That Chrysler was a corpse, early 2000s model. Sunroof sealed with duct tape, one of the tires eaten halfway through by rot, but it wasn't the car that stopped him mid-step. It was the figure curled up in the back seat. A woman, thin, shoulders hunched, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her breath fogged the window in steady, shallow bursts. He tapped on the glass with 2 fingers. No response. He tried again, gentler this time. She stirred slowly, like waking up from somewhere far too deep. Her eyes, sleep-swollen, red-rimmed, flew open, and for one long second she looked like a deer about to bolt. I didn't mean to... I was just, she mumbled, trying to sit upright and failing, arms shaking. Mason stepped back, palms raised. Easy, he said quietly. You're not in trouble. She stared at him like she didn't believe a word, and frankly, Mason wouldn't have either. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, sharp jaw, still wearing a grease-smeared hoodie that made him look rougher than he meant to. But something in his voice, low, steady, not pushing, must have calmed her. A little. Your engine's smoking, he added, and this rain's not letting up any time soon. You need help? Her lips parted like she might lie, then closed again. Her shoulders dropped. My phone died. And I didn't know where else to go. I was just trying to stay warm. She said it like it was a crime, like needing warmth was asking too much. You hungry? He asked. What? I got some leftover chili from last night, not fancy, but it's hot. She blinked, slowly. I guess so. He didn't say anything more, just turned and walked toward the garage, flicking on more lights as he went. She didn't follow right away, but eventually he heard her hesitant footsteps splash across the lot. Inside, he cranked up the portable heater, dug into the beat-up mini-fridge, and poured her a steaming bowl of chili. When she stepped through the door, drenched, hugging herself like her own arms were the only thing holding her together, he handed her a towel. You look like a hurricane spat you out, he said. She almost smiled. Almost. I'm Brooke, she said softly. Brooke Landry. He nodded. Mason. She settled onto a stool in the corner, cradling the bowl between trembling fingers like it was a lifeline. They didn't talk much at first. He worked. She ate. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was safe. Like both of them had too. Many sharp edges and not enough soft landings, and somehow this cracked, echoing garage was the only place in the world where they weren't expected to explain themselves. Eventually she asked, "Why are you being kind?" He looked up from under the hood of an old Ford, because someone once was to me when I didn't deserve it either. She stared at him a long time, eyes glassy, then went back to her chili. Outside, the rain kept falling, and inside, something had just started to shift. By mid-morning, the rain had turned into a fine mist, coating the garage windows with a sheen that made the whole place feel more like a fishbowl than a mechanic shop. Mason had pulled Brooke's Chrysler into the bay, half out of curiosity and half out of an instinct he didn't quite understand. Something about her didn't fit the picture. People didn't usually show up at his shop in the middle of the night and sleep in a broken-down car like they were waiting for the world to forget them. But Brooke didn't seem like the kind of woman who belonged in that car either. Her hands were small, calloused but clean under the dirt. Her shoes weren't cheap, just worn past their prime, and when she spoke, there was something deliberate about her words. Not like someone who never had anything, but like someone who'd once had too much. Mason didn't press her. Not yet. Instead, he focused on the Chrysler's engine while she sat quietly nearby, sipping his second cup of coffee, now dressed in one of his oversized flannels. Her soaked jacket lay draped over a rusted pipe behind her, dripping slowly onto the floor. That's when he heard it. A soft thump as something slipped from the inner lining. She didn't notice, but he did. It was a lanyard. ID badge still attached. Water-streaked and curled at the corners. Mason squinted at the lettering. Brooke Landry, Senior Systems Analyst, Ceradine Technologies. His hand froze on the wrench. He had heard of Ceradine. Everyone in the tech world had. A privately held software company that was rumored to be working on next-generation AI integration, cybersecurity contracts with the US government, and a buyout offer from a trillion-dollar Silicon Valley juggernaut. And yet the woman sitting in his garage, shivering, lost, broke, was wearing their name around her neck like it meant nothing. He tucked the badge back under the jacket quietly and said nothing. Not yet. You got someone looking for you?" he asked as casually as he could manage. She paused, eyes flicking to him like she knew the question wasn't harmless. "No," she said after a beat. "No one that matters." That word, matters, landed hard. Mason didn't push, but his mind started racing. Who walks away from a company like Ceradine, and why was she sleeping in a car that couldn't even make it past first gear? As the day wore on, he fixed her engine enough to get it running again. Not purring, but breathing, enough to move if she needed it to. She watched him the whole time, her gaze heavy, like she was trying to understand him too. "You could have kicked me out," she said at one point, wrapping her hands tighter around the warm mug. "Could have," he said. "Didn't. Why? Because people don't forget how it feels to be left outside." She didn't respond to that, didn't need to. Later that afternoon, he found her sitting near the back of the garage, tracing her fingers over the edge of an old workbench, lost in thought. "You ever fix cars?" he asked. She looked up, startled. No, I worked behind screens. Didn't touch much that had oil in it. Looks like life brought you to the other side of the firewall." That made her laugh, barely, but it was a laugh. A real one. Then, softly, "I used to design security systems to keep people out. Now I can't even get into my own apartment." "What happened?" Mason asked. And that's when her face shifted, something between sorrow and steel. "There are men with too much power," she said, "and too many secrets. I found something I wasn't supposed to. And instead of a thank you," her voice caught, "I got erased." Mason didn't speak. "Because what do you say to that? I didn't do anything wrong," she added, quieter now. "But when money's involved, truth doesn't mean anything. I didn't just lose my job. I lost everything, my savings, my reputation, my future. And..." Then she looked him dead in the eye. "You ever get to the point where you wonder if maybe disappearing would hurt less than fighting?" He stared at her, long and hard. "Yeah," he said, "but then I remember, if I disappear, they win. And I ain't built to let cowards win." Brooke stared back, her eyes rimmed with something heavier than just tears. Respect, hope, maybe even a spark of fight. "You fixed more than my car today," she said. He shrugged. "I just gave you a warm meal and a place to sit." "No," she whispered. "You saw me. I didn't even know how much I needed that." The heater hummed behind them. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but the storm between them, it was just beginning. Mason didn't sleep much that night. Brooke had taken the small cot in the back room, his makeshift break area, wrapped in a few spare blankets and a quilt older than she was. She didn't ask for more. She didn't complain, but the way she whispered thanks as she closed the door stuck in Mason's head like a nail. He stood in the garage for a long while, just staring at the dark shape of her Chrysler under the flickering overhead light. The ID badge. Ceradine Technologies. Senior Systems Analyst. What was a woman with credentials like that doing sleeping in a broken car behind a roadside garage in the middle of nowhere? At 3:18 a.m., Mason finally made a choice. He grabbed his old laptop, dusted it off, and sat down at his cluttered desk. His fingers hovered over the keys before typing Brooke Landry plus Ceradine Technologies plus whistleblower. The search results loaded slowly. His shop's Wi-Fi was as stubborn as his father used to be. But when they came in waves. Ex-Ceradine analyst accused of data breach. Landry allegedly stole proprietary code. Brooke Landry fired amidst internal security scandal. His gut twisted. But deeper in the results, past the tabloid headlines and hollow tech blogs, he found an obscure piece written by a freelance journalist on Medium. "She didn't steal anything," the article read. "She found irregularities, massive data scraping, illegal surveillance contracts, offshore accounts, and tried to report them internally. Instead of an investigation, they buried her, silenced her, burned her name. And no one, not one, came to her defense. Mason closed the laptop with a quiet click and stared into the shadows. His chest felt heavier than usual, not from pity, not from guilt, but from a kind of cold, white-hot anger that simmered low and deep. He'd seen this kind of power play before, people in suits stepping on the quiet ones, crooked backroom deals, where money paved over morality. Hell, he'd watched his own brother lose everything because of one lawyer's lie, and a judge too brought to care. This wasn't new to him, but Brooke was, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain. He wasn't about to let her go down alone. By the time morning light cracked through the haze, Brooke was sitting at his workbench, tying her hair back with a shoelace and sipping stale coffee like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. "I saw your badge," Mason said simply. She didn't even flinch, just stared into her cup. "I figured you did. I read the articles, all of them." Her jaw tightened. "You think I did it?" she asked. "No," he said. "But I think you're scared out of your damn mind." She finally looked at him. And that's when her voice cracked just a little. "I lost everything, Mason. I had savings, a condo, a career, and then, snap, I was gone. My keycard didn't work. My accounts were frozen. Friends stopped answering. They even had someone follow me for a while. I could feel it. Every time I turned around, they were there, watching, waiting. And the cops. They said if I really had something, I should have gone through official channels, which, funny enough, was exactly what I did." Mason leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So what now?" She laughed bitterly. "Now, I try to figure out how to stay invisible." "You're not the invisible type." That made her pause. "What do you mean?" "You got fire in you, Brooke. I can see it, even when you're trying to hide." She didn't reply right away, but something shifted in her posture, a quiet straightening of the shoulders, a slow, steady breath. "I used to be proud of what I built," she said softly. "Lines of code that could protect people, defend small businesses. But it turns out those same tools got sold to the highest bidder, governments, corporations, people I never approved." She glanced at him. "I wanted to expose it, make it stop, but I didn't think they'd come after me." Mason's eyes narrowed. "You still have proof?" She hesitated. "I made backups on encrypted flash drives, but they're hidden." "Where?" "In a storage unit 40 miles from here. He didn't miss a beat, then we're going to get them." She blinked. "Mason, no. If they find out, let them," he said. "If they want to silence you, they got to go through me." Brooke stared at him like she wasn't sure whether to cry or scream. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you walked into my garage with nothing but a broken car and a heart full of pain, and still managed to say thank you before you went to sleep. That kind of person deserves someone in their corner." She shook her head slowly. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Then tell me." And so she did. Over the next hour, she laid it all out. How Saradine had manipulated data. How they sold private user behavior to government agencies without consent. How she had stumbled on a confidential contract with 6 shadow companies and flagged it internally. How her manager smiled at her across the boardroom table, thanked her for her diligence, and then reported her for unauthorized access. Her voice wavered only once when she said, "I didn't just lose my job, Mason. I lost the version of myself that believed in the world." He stepped forward then, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's build you a new one." They left just after midnight, not because it was safe, but because it wasn't. Mason insisted. If someone was watching her, they'd least expect her to move in the dead of night, when most small towns were sleeping through reruns and thunder. Brooke didn't argue. She just pulled on a new hoodie Mason had left folded on the cot, tied back her hair, and quietly slid into the passenger seat of his dented Chevy truck. The heater barely worked, and the radio dial hadn't moved off classic rock in 4 years. But the moment they drove off, the air inside was different. He didn't ask if she was scared. He didn't need to. She kept both hands folded tightly in her lap, her gaze glued to the road. Mason's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but his voice stayed calm, grounding. "Tell me where we're headed." "There's a public storage unit off Route 57, right behind an old diner called Lou's. I used to stop there on the way to work. The unit's in my mother's name. They don't know about it." "You sure?" Brooke looked at him then. Her eyes said it all. No. But her voice answered, "It's the only place left." They reached Lou's just before 1 mile. The sign was dark. The lot was empty. Mason parked behind a row of rusted delivery trucks and killed the lights. Brooke led the way on foot, quiet, deliberate, scanning every corner like someone who hadn't been able to trust shadows in months. Unit 117. She knelt in front of it and retrieved the key from her boot. Her hands were shaking. "You okay?" Mason asked. She nodded once but didn't look at him. The padlock popped off with a loud click. The door creaked up slowly, and the inside revealed what looked like the chaotic remnants of someone's life crammed into 15 square feet. Tote bins, a broken vacuum, boxes marked "Don't Open," and a single army duffel bag. Brooke dropped to her knees and unzipped it. There, taped to the inside lining, were 2 flash drives, silver, unmarked, still sealed in plastic. She stared at them. "Mason, I got you," he said gently. "Come on, let's get back." But just as she turned, thud. The storage unit's metal door slammed shut behind them. Mason spun. "Brooke, move!" A lock clicked outside. Brooke's face went pale. Then a voice, muffled, mocking. "Well, damn, Brooke. Took you long enough to come back here." Mason pulled her behind him, fists clenched. "Who is that?" She didn't answer. Her whole body went still. Then the voice again. "You think we wouldn't find you, that you'd just walk away with company property and not pay for it?" Mason stepped forward and pounded on the door. "Open it! Now!" "Oh, we will. Once we have what?" She took. Brooke's eyes met Mason's. Her hand slipped into her pocket, slow, deliberate. "One of the drives." She held it tightly. "You're not getting it," she shouted. "You destroyed my life. You think I'd hand you the only thing I have left?" The man outside didn't laugh. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "Suit yourself." Then silence, then the faint crack of a match, and Mason's nose caught something sharp, chemical, fuel. "Brooke, they're gonna torch it." Panic surged. The walls of the unit were thin, old, flammable. A fire here wouldn't just destroy evidence, it would erase them. Mason lunged for the back wall, scanning for weak points. "Help me find something, anything, metal, heavy." "We're busting out." Brooke moved fast, wrenched a crowbar from an old bin. Mason took it, slammed it into the bottom corner of the wall. Again and again, smoke began curling under the door. "Faster!" she coughed. The third hit, metal screeched. Then the fourth, crash. A piece of siding gave way. Mason shoved her through first, then followed, scraping his arms as he forced his body into the narrow gap. They rolled out, gasping in the cold dirt behind the next row of units. Behind them, flames licked the bottom of the door. And in the distance, tires, fleeing. They didn't chase. They didn't need to. They had what they came for, and they were still breathing. They didn't speak until they were halfway back to the shop, headlights slicing through fog like a prayer. Brooke's voice was quiet but solid. "They were from Ceredine's private security team." "I figured," Mason said. "They were going to kill us." He looked at her. "But they didn't." She glanced down at the drive in her hand. "It's not just emails. It's source code, contracts, audio recordings, internal memos, everything. And what are you going to do with it?" She turned to him, eyes sharp. "I'm going to finish what I started." That night, as she worked from Mason's old desktop, rewriting firewalls, encrypting folders, documenting every shred of proof, He sat quietly across the room, just watching her. There was fire in her again, not the fire of survival, the fire of purpose. She didn't belong in a back seat anymore. She was a storm. And Mason, he realized something dangerous and beautiful. He didn't want to let her go. It all happened in 48 hours. No sleep, no breaks. Just Brooke's fingers flying across the keys, building firewalls and backdoors, encrypting files so deeply no hacker on Earth could find them without her permission. Her focus was surgical, her precision sharp. But beneath all that control was a woman pushed to the edge of the world, clawing her way back with nothing but proof and rage. Mason watched her work. From the other side of the room, he didn't interrupt, just brewed coffee, ran cables, stood guard. Every time the gate creaked, his hand instinctively slid to the wrench on his belt, not because he wanted to fight her, but because he wouldn't let her be ambushed again. By the second day, Brooke's face had changed, not softer, not calmer, stronger. Like the part of her they tried to break had finally decided to fight back with everything it had left. "We do this now," she said. "You sure?" She nodded. "I already built the dead man's switch. If anything happens to me, the files go out automatically to 3 international journalists. 1 federal investigator and a transparency watchdog that's hated Sarah Dean for years." Mason looked at her like she'd just built a bomb. "You came prepared." "No," she said. "I became prepared. They uploaded the first part of the data dump to an anonymous server. Within minutes, encrypted emails and voice recordings of Sarah Dean's executives discussing illegal data sales and surveillance were live. She used a pseudonym. Whistle Fox. It trended within the hour. Explosive new leak alleges corporate spying on American citizens. Tech giant Sarah Dean caught selling secrets to foreign powers. But with the spotlight came the danger. By that evening, Brooke's face was plastered across 6 media sites. The ones who hated her before now wanted interviews. The ones who ignored her now begged for comment. Mason stared at the screen. "They're going to come harder this time. I know. You need to disappear for a while. Get safe." She turned to him. "I am safe. Not here." "Yes, Mason. Here." She stepped closer, holding his gaze. "When I was alone, I was just surviving. But since the day I woke up in your garage, I felt human again. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't want anything. You just gave me space to breathe. That means more than you'll ever understand." He looked down, then up again, quietly. "I think I do." She smiled then, tired, worn, but real. "I never asked. Why do you live like this? Alone? Quiet? Just fixing things in the middle of nowhere?" Mason took a breath. "Because I messed up once." "What happened?" "My brother trusted me with something I couldn't fix. A legal fight, money, family land. I thought I could take on his problems like they were car parts, just wrench them into place. I lost it all for him. He hasn't talked to me since." He looked her straight in the eye. "I thought fixing other people's messes might somehow fix what I broke back then." She placed a hand gently on his arm. "You've already fixed more than you know." But fate wasn't done testing them. The next morning, a black SUV rolled up outside the shop, unmarked, engine running. Brooke peeked out from the back, her shoulders tight. "They're here." Mason nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure they regret it." He stepped out first, slow and deliberate, wiping his hands on a rag as if the visitors were just customers. 3 men stepped out, suits, serious. One of them called out, "Mr. Burke, we're with Vandal and Cobras Legal. We'd like a word with your guest." "You got a warrant?" Mason asked. "No, sir. But if she doesn't come voluntarily, we're prepared to escalate." Mason smiled, but it was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You want to escalate?" he said. "Start with me." Brooke stepped out behind him, calm but unshakable. "I've already released the files. You're too late. You've put yourself in Danger, one of the men said. We can still fix this. Quietly, walk away now, and Saradine won't pursue charges. Mason barked a laugh. You think you're offering mercy? Brooke stepped forward. No, she said. You're begging for silence. Then she held up her phone and hit send. A second wave of files launched into the cloud. Real-time footage. Wire transfers. Internal memos. The men froze. Too late, Brooke said. And if anything happens to me, the rest goes public, including names, addresses, and sealed court documents. I suggest you go home, or find a good lawyer. The men didn't reply. They just stared for a moment, then climbed back into the SUV and drove off, tires crunching on gravel. Brooke turned to Mason, her shoulders finally sagging with something like peace. They won't be back. No, he said, they won't. A month later, Brooke was on the news, not as a criminal but as a hero. Multiple executives had resigned. The federal government opened 2 investigations. The name Brooke Landry became a symbol of courage and defiance. She didn't chase the spotlight, she didn't profit, but she didn't run anymore either. She moved back into a small apartment across town, close enough to the garage, where she still helped Mason between coding jobs. They didn't label what they had, but it was there. In the quiet glances, the soft smiles, the way they stood a little closer every day. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, she sat on the hood of a car Mason was fixing and whispered, "You know, I think I was meant to find your garage that night." He didn't look up, just handed her a socket wrench. "I think I was meant to open that door, and maybe, just maybe, 2 broken people who had nothing left found everything. They were missing in each other.